My name is Emma, and at 32 years old, I discovered that my younger sister Olivia had been stealing significant aspects of my life for the past 3 years. I should have celebrated my promotion to marketing director that Friday afternoon, but instead, I froze in place, staring at an email that would unravel everything I thought I knew about family loyalty. The message was from a stranger named Marcus, with image attachments showing my sister at events she claimed never to have attended, wearing clothes I thought I had lost, and introducing herself using my name, my accomplishments, and my life story. If you've ever felt the cold shock of betrayal from someone you would have trusted with your life, let me know where you're watching from. Hit that like button and subscribe to join a community that understands that family betrayal cuts deeper than any wound a stranger could inflict. For most of my life, I had been the responsible older sister to Olivia, who at 29 was 3 years my junior, but often seemed a decade behind in maturity. We grew up in a middle-class neighborhood in Portland, where our parents worked hard to provide us with comfortable but not extravagant lives. Dad was an accountant at a local firm, and Mom taught second grade at the elementary school down the street. They raised us to value education, hard work, and above all, family loyalty. I followed their blueprint. I studied business marketing at Portland State University, graduated with honors, and secured an entry-level position at Horizon Marketing Group, a mid-sized agency with impressive clients and growth potential. Over the past 7 years, I have worked my way up from marketing assistant to senior account manager. And last week, my current boss informed me that the director position would be mine following his retirement next month. Olivia's path had been different. Where I was studious and focused, Olivia was spontaneous and creative. Where I planned meticulously, she improvised brilliantly. Where I saved, she spent. These differences had never bothered me much growing up. I had always admired her free spirit, her ability to charm anyone she met, and her artistic eye. She had studied fashion design but never completed her degree, bouncing instead between retail jobs, freelance styling gigs, and the occasional modeling job. 3 years ago, after a bad breakup left her without an apartment, I had offered her my spare bedroom until you got back on your feet. My 2-bedroom condo wasn't huge, but it was in a desirable neighborhood near downtown Portland with hardwood floors, high ceilings, and a small balcony overlooking a park. I had purchased it with my savings and a small inheritance from our grandmother, proud to be a homeowner before 30. Living with Olivia again after years apart had been a change. She kept odd hours, left dishes in the sink, and borrowed my things without asking. But she also brought life and laughter into my otherwise predictable existence. She cooked amazing meals when inspired, introduced me to interesting people, and pushed me to occasionally step outside my comfort zone. The arrangement wasn't perfect, but it worked well enough. At least, that's what I thought until that Friday afternoon, when the email from Marcus changed everything. I had just returned from a lunch celebration with my coworkers. My boss had officially announced my upcoming promotion, and the team had taken me out for champagne and sushi. I was feeling accomplished and appreciated, riding high on congratulations and well wishes. Back at my desk, I was clearing out my inbox when I noticed an email from an unfamiliar address with the subject line, "You should know what your sister is doing." I would have dismissed it as spam, but the specificity caught my attention. The message was brief. "I met your sister Olivia at a charity gala last month. She introduced herself as Emma Wilson, marketing director at Horizon. I was impressed by her knowledge and connections until I met the real Emma Wilson, you, at a client meeting yesterday. I thought you should see these photos and know what is happening. I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news." Below were 5 attachments. With growing disbelief, I opened each one. The first showed Olivia at what appeared to be a high-end networking event, wearing my navy blue blazer that had disappeared from my closet months ago. She was chatting with the CEO of one of Portland's most successful tech startups, a man I had been trying to schedule a meeting with for weeks. The second was Olivia at a charity gala, wearing a designer dress I didn't recognize, introducing herself to the event photographer as Emma Wilson, marketing director at Horizon. The third showed her handing out business cards, my business cards, at a marketing conference I had been too busy to attend. The fourth was a screenshot of a LinkedIn profile using my name, my image, slightly edited, and my professional history, but with embellishments that included client accounts I had never worked on and awards I had never won. The fifth and most damning issue was a video clip. Olivia was giving a presentation at a small business workshop, confidently explaining marketing strategies that I had developed, sharing case studies of my successful campaigns, and taking credit for my work while introducing herself as me. My hands were shaking as I set down my phone. The office around me continued its normal Friday afternoon bustle, but I felt disconnected from it all, as if watching from behind glass. How long had this been going on? How many people in my professional circle had met Emma Wilson without realizing they were meeting my sister? How many opportunities had she intercepted? How many connections had she manipulated? I needed answers, but I also needed to be strategic. If Olivia had been impersonating me professionally, confronting her immediately might cause her to panic and potentially damage my reputation further. I needed to understand the full scope of what I was dealing with before I confronted her. I closed the email and tried to focus on my work, but my mind was racing. I remembered all the times Olivia had asked detailed questions about my job, clients, and projects, questions I had happily answered, thinking she was finally taking an interest in my career. I remembered the business cards that had mysteriously run out faster than usual, the networking events I'd missed due to scheduling conflicts that Olivia had encouraged me to skip, and the clothes that had disappeared from my closet only to reappear weeks later. By the time 5 p.m. arrived, I had formulated a plan. Instead of going home, I texted Olivia that I would be working late and then meeting colleagues for drinks to celebrate my promotion. In reality, I drove to a coffee shop and opened my laptop. For the next 3 hours, I conducted a thorough investigation into my sister's double life. I started with social media, searching variations of my name across platforms. I found several accounts using my name with privacy settings that had prevented me from discovering them earlier. The profile pictures were either of Olivia styled to look more like me or actual photos of me that had been cropped or filtered. The content was a carefully curated version of my professional life, with posts about marketing insights, client successes, and industry events, some of which I recognized as my own experiences. Others were completely fabricated. Next, I searched my name in combination with speaker, presenter, and workshop. Videos and event listings appeared showing Olivia presenting at small business seminars, startup incubators, and marketing workshops across the city, all as me. In one particularly painful discovery, I found her listed as a guest lecturer at my alma mater for a marketing class scheduled for the following month. I checked my email archives and found dozens of invitations to speak at events, requests for interviews, and networking opportunities that I had never seen. Somehow, Olivia had gained access to my professional email and had been intercepting these messages, responding as me, and then deleting them from my inbox. The more I discovered, the colder I felt. This wasn't opportunistic identity borrowing. This was a systematic campaign to steal my professional identity while living under my roof. My sister had been building a parallel career using my name, my credentials, and my hard work, all while I supported her financially and emotionally. By 9 p.m., I had compiled enough evidence to confront her, but I decided against going home that night. I wasn't sure I could face her without completely falling apart. Instead, I booked a hotel room downtown and sent her another text saying I was staying at a friend's place after too many celebratory drinks. Her response came quickly. "Congrats again, sis. So proud of you. Don't worry about me. I'm heading out to meet friends anyway. Enjoy your night. You earned it." The irony of her congratulating me for a promotion she had been pretending was already hers for months was not lost on me. I spent a restless night in the hotel, alternating between rage, heartbreak, and strategic planning. By morning, I had decided on my approach. I wouldn't confront her immediately. Instead, I would gather more information, secure my professional identity, and then address the situation from a position of strength. Over the weekend, I stayed away from the condo, telling Olivia I was on a spontaneous weekend trip with friends to celebrate my promotion. In reality, I was setting up fraud alerts on my accounts, changing all my passwords, and meeting with an identity theft specialist recommended by my bank. I also scheduled a meeting with my company's legal department for Monday morning. The legal meeting was both reassuring and alarming. The company would support me in addressing any professional misrepresentation, but they were concerned about potential damage to client relationships and the agency's reputation. We agreed on a careful approach. They would prepare cease and desist documentation while I gathered more evidence about the extent of Olivia's impersonation. That evening, I finally returned to the condo, having prepared myself for the confrontation. But when I arrived, Olivia wasn't there. Instead, I found a note on the kitchen counter. Got a last-minute styling gig in Seattle. Back in 3 days. Left dinner for you in the fridge. Love you. P.S. So proud of my director sister. Part of me was relieved for the extra time to prepare, but another part was suspicious of the timing. Had she somehow realized I was onto her? Had Marcus contacted her as well? I decided to use these 3 days to my advantage. I started by thoroughly searching her room, something I would have considered an unforgivable invasion of privacy days earlier, but now seemed necessary. What I found exceeded my worst fears. In her closet, behind her usual eclectic wardrobe, I discovered a section of clothes that mirrored my professional style. Blazers, tailored pants, and conservative dresses, all in my size but of higher quality than I could typically afford. In her desk drawer was a planner filled with events where Emma Wilson was scheduled to appear, along with detailed notes about my clients, my projects, and talking points about my work. Most disturbingly, I found a document titled Emma's Life that contained information about my education, my career path, my accomplishments, and even personal anecdotes I had shared with her over the years. It was essentially a character study, a guide to becoming me. I also discovered financial records showing income from speaking engagements, consulting sessions, and freelance projects, all under my name. The amounts weren't huge, but they totaled several $1,000s over the past year. This explained how Olivia had been able to buy expensive clothes and take weekend trips despite her sporadic official employment. By the time I finished searching her room, I felt physically ill. This wasn't identity theft, it was life theft. My sister had been systematically studying me, copying me, and in some ways replacing me, all while living in my home and accepting my support. The next day, I took a personal day from work and visited the venues where Olivia had presented as me. I spoke with event organizers, explaining the situation as diplomatically as possible. Most were shocked and apologetic. A few were skeptical until I showed them my driver's license and company ID. All had the same basic story. They had been impressed by Emma Wilson's presentations, but had booked her through social media or email, never through official company channels. On the third day, I met with a lawyer specializing in identity theft and defamation. She advised me on my legal options and helped me draft documents to protect myself going forward. She also warned me that family identity theft cases were particularly complex, both legally and emotionally, and suggested I consider therapy to help process the betrayal. By the time Olivia was due to return, I had a complete picture of her deception and a plan for confronting her. I had secured my professional identity, documented the fraud, and prepared myself emotionally as best I could. I was ready. Or so I thought. Olivia returned late Wednesday evening, breezing through the door with shopping bags and a bright smile. "Emma, I brought you a present from Seattle," she called out, seemingly oblivious to the tension radiating from me as I sat at the kitchen table. "We need to talk, Olivia," I said quietly. She set down her bags, her smile faltering slightly. "Sounds serious. Is everything okay with the promotion?" "The promotion is fine," I replied, my voice steady despite the anger and hurt churning inside me. "But I know what you've been doing. I know you've been pretending to be me." For a moment, her face registered shock and fear. Then, remarkably, she laughed, a dismissive, light-hearted sound that made my blood boil. "What are you talking about? Pretending to be you? Why would I do that?" I silently opened my laptop and turned it toward her. On the screen was a video of her presenting at a marketing workshop, introducing herself as Emma Wilson. I watched her face as the reality of the situation sank in. "I can explain," she said, her voice suddenly small. "Please do," I replied, struggling to maintain my composure. Explain why you've been stealing my identity, my work, and my professional reputation while living in my home." What followed was perhaps the most painful conversation of my life. Olivia's explanation unfolded in a series of justifications, minimizations, and occasional moments of genuine remorse that only made the betrayal more confusing. It had started, she claimed, with a simple misunderstanding. She had attended a networking event with a friend and had been mistaken for me by someone who recognized my name from the industry. Instead of correcting them, she had played along, enjoying the respect and attention that came with my professional status. "It felt good to be taken seriously for once," she admitted. "People listened to me, they valued my opinions. They weren't looking at me as some pretty, flighty girl." From there, it had escalated gradually. One impersonation led to another. She had studied my work, listened to my phone calls, and read my emails when I wasn't looking. She had practiced my speaking style and professional mannerisms. She had created a version of Emma Wilson that was part me, part her idealized self. "I wasn't trying to hurt you," she insisted, tears streaming down her face. "I was borrowing your life a little bit. I always knew it was temporary until I figured out my path." "Borrowing my life?" I repeated incredulously. "You were getting paid to give presentations as me. You were networking with my potential clients. You created fake social media accounts in my name. That's not borrowing, Olivia, that's stealing." "I was going to tell you," she said. "Once I had established myself, I was going to transition to my own identity. I was going to use the connections and experience to build something for myself." "At my expense," I pointed out. "What about the damage to my reputation when people realized they hadn't been dealing with the real Emma Wilson? What about the opportunities you intercepted that should have been mine?" She didn't have good answers for these questions. Instead, she cycled between apologies, justifications, and attempts to cut the impact of her actions. It was as if she genuinely couldn't understand the severity of what she had done. "I'm your sister," she said finally, as if that explained everything. "I would never really hurt you. This wasn't about taking anything away from you, it was about finding something for myself." I looked at her, and realized with a sinking heart that she believed what she was saying. In her mind, this elaborate deception wasn't a betrayal. It was Olivia being Olivia, taking a shortcut and borrowing something shiny that caught her attention. "You need to leave," I said finally. "Not tonight, but soon. I can't have you living here anymore." Her face crumpled. "Where am I supposed to go? I can't afford a place of my own, not in this neighborhood." "That's not my problem," I replied, surprised by the coldness in my voice. "You should have thought about that before you decided to steal my identity." The next few days were a strange, tense dance of avoidance. Olivia and I moved around the condo like ghosts, careful not to occupy the same space at the same time. She made several attempts to restart the conversation, to explain further, and to apologize in ways that might make a difference, but I wasn't ready to hear it. Meanwhile, I was implementing the protection plan I had developed with my lawyer and my company. I sent formal notifications to all the venues where Olivia had presented as me, explaining the situation and offering to provide legitimate presentations if they were interested. I worked with my company's legal team to send cease and desist letters to anyone still promoting events featuring Emma Wilson that I hadn't agreed to. I also met with my boss to explain the situation. To my relief, he was understanding and supportive, more concerned about helping me address the issue than about any potential embarrassment to the company. We developed a communication strategy for clients who might have met Emma Wilson at events where I wasn't actually present. A week after the confrontation, Olivia announced that she had found a room to rent in a shared house across town. She would be moving out the following weekend. Part of me was relieved. Another part was heartbroken that our relationship had come to this. The night before she moved out, she left an envelope on my bedroom door. Inside was a handwritten letter and a check for $4,500, the total amount she had earned from speaking as me. The letter was long and emotional, full of apologies and explanations. She wrote about growing up in my shadow, always feeling like the disappointing sister, the one who couldn't find her path or meet our parents' expectations. She wrote about admiring me, envying me, and eventually finding it easier to become me than to figure out who she was supposed to be. "I know what I did was wrong," she concluded. "I know I've broken your trust in ways that might be irreparable, but you're my sister, my only sister, and I hope that someday you can forgive me. I'm going to work on becoming someone you can be proud of, someone worthy of being Emma Wilson's sister." I set the letter aside, too emotionally exhausted to process it fully. I placed the check in my desk drawer, unsure whether cashing it would feel like accepting blood money or refusing it would be another way of cutting ties with my sister. Over the next few months, I focused on repairing the professional damage Olivia had caused. Most people were understanding once I explained the situation, though I kept the details vague, usually referring to it as a family member's misguided attempt to help my career, rather than outright identity theft. To my surprise, some of Olivia's presentations had been quite good. Several event organizers mentioned that while they understood the deception was wrong, Emma Wilson had been one of their most popular speakers. One even suggested that perhaps Olivia had a future in marketing herself, given her ability to understand and communicate the concepts so effectively. This created a complicated emotional knot for me. On one hand, I was still angry about the deception. On the other, I found myself wondering if I had somehow failed Olivia by not recognizing her potential in this area. Had she needed to become me to discover talents she didn't know she possessed? Olivia respected my request for space, limiting her communication to occasional text messages, checking in, or sharing brief updates about her life. She had found a job as an assistant at a small marketing firm, legitimately, this time under her name. She was taking online courses in digital marketing. She was seeing a therapist to work through her identity issues, as she put it. I responded politely but briefly to these messages, not ready to reestablish a closer connection. Our parents, who lived in Arizona and whom I had reluctantly informed about the situation, kept encouraging reconciliation. "She made a mistake, Emma," my mother said during one phone call. "A big one, yes, but she's still your sister." 3 months after Olivia moved out, I received an unexpected email from Marcus, the man who had originally alerted me to her deception. He was checking in to see how I was doing and whether the situation had been resolved. We exchanged a few messages, and eventually, he asked if I would be willing to meet for coffee to discuss a potential collaboration between his tech startup and my marketing agency. I agreed, partly out of professional interest, and partly because I wanted to thank him in person for bringing Olivia's deception to my attention. We met at a cafe near my office, and I was immediately struck by how easy he was to talk to. Tall with kind eyes and a quick smile, Marcus had a way of making complicated tech concepts accessible without being condescending. As we discussed his company's marketing needs, I found myself genuinely engaged in the conversation, momentarily forgetting the strange circumstances that had brought us together. It was only when the discussion turned to a potential contract that the subject of Olivia inevitably arose. "I have to admit," he said, "your sister was very convincing. If I hadn't met you at that client meeting, I might never have known she wasn't the real Emma Wilson." I sighed, the familiar mixture of anger and embarrassment washing over me. I'm still trying to understand why she did it. She had her talents, her path that she could have followed. Marcus considered this thoughtfully. "Sometimes it's easier to step into a role that's already defined than to create one for yourself," he suggested. "Especially if you've grown up believing that the role is more valued than anything you might create." His insight struck me as surprisingly perceptive. "You sound like you're speaking from experience," I observed. He smiled ruefully. "My brother and I had a similar dynamic, though he never went as far as identity theft. But I understand the shadow that a successful sibling can cast, sometimes without even realizing it." Our conversation shifted to family dynamics, shared experiences of sibling rivalry, and the complicated nature of forgiveness. By the time we parted ways, we had not only outlined a potential marketing strategy for his company, but had also made a personal connection that felt meaningful. As I walked back to my office, I found myself thinking about Olivia in a slightly different light. The anger was still there, the sense of betrayal still raw, but Marcus's perspective had added a new dimension to my understanding of her actions. That evening, I reread Olivia's letter, this time with less anger clouding my comprehension. Phrases that had before struck me as excuses now read more like painful admissions. I was always Olivia, Emma's sister, never Olivia, she had written. When I was you, people looked at me the way they'd always looked at you, like what I said mattered. For the first time, I allowed myself to imagine what it might have been like growing up as my sister, watching me excel in school, earn our parents' approval, and build a stable, successful career while she struggled to find her place. It didn't excuse what she had done, but it helped me understand it a little better. The next day, I made a decision that surprised even me. I called the university where Olivia had been scheduled to give a guest lecture to me, an engagement that had been canceled after my notifications about the identity theft. I asked if they might be interested in a joint presentation. Emma Wilson, marketing director at Horizon, discussing strategic marketing approaches, accompanied by Olivia Wilson, an emerging voice in creative marketing applications. The department chair was understandably confused, given the previous situation, but intrigued by the proposal. We agreed to meet to discuss the potential format and content. Before I could second-guess myself, I texted Olivia, "I have a proposition for you. Professional, not personal, coffee tomorrow." Her response was immediate, "Yes, anytime, anywhere." We met at a neutral location, a coffee shop neither of us frequented regularly. Olivia arrived early, visibly nervous, dressed simply in jeans and a sweater, noticeably different from both her usual eclectic style and the professional wardrobe she had adopted when impersonating me. After awkward greetings and small talk about her new apartment and job, I explained my proposal. A legitimate opportunity for her to present alongside me, as herself, drawing on the knowledge she had absorbed while presenting it through her unique perspective. "Why would you do this for me?" she asked, clearly suspicious that this was some form of trap or test. "I'm not doing it for you," I clarified. "I'm doing it because several event organizers mentioned that your presentations were good. You have a talent for communicating these concepts. It seems wasteful to let that talent go unused because you acquired the knowledge through deceptive means." She stared at me, tears welling in her eyes. "I don't deserve this chance." "Probably not," I agreed. "But I'm offering it anyway, with conditions. You'll present as yourself. You'll acknowledge that you're new to the field. You'll never again represent yourself as me or claim my work as your own. And you'll continue your marketing education legitimately." "Yes to all that," she said quickly. "Absolutely yes." "This isn't forgiveness," I warned her. "This is a professional opportunity that makes sense for both of us. Our relationship is a separate issue that will take much longer to repair, if it ever can be." She nodded, accepting these terms with a humility I wasn't used to seeing from her. "I understand. And Emma, thank you, not for this, but for not pressing charges, for not exposing me publicly. I know you could have destroyed me." "You're still my sister," I said simply. "I don't want to destroy you. I need you to stop destroying me." Over the following weeks, we prepared for the university presentation. Our interactions were strictly professional, focused entirely on the content and structure of the lecture. Olivia worked diligently, bringing a creative perspective to the material that complemented my more strategic approach. Despite myself, I was impressed by her insights and her willingness to put in the work. The presentation itself went surprisingly well. I introduced the marketing fundamentals and strategic frameworks, while Olivia presented case studies and creative applications. The students responded positively to our different styles, and the department chair suggested we consider making it an annual event. As we packed up our materials afterward, Olivia said quietly, "This is what I should have done from the beginning. Asked for your help, collaborated with you, instead of trying to become you." I nodded, not quite ready to offer absolution, but acknowledging the truth in her statement. "You have your voice, Olivia. It's worth developing." In the months that followed, we established a new kind of relationship, not the close sisterhood we had once shared, but not the complete estrangement I had initially envisioned after discovering her deception. We met occasionally for professional collaborations, gradually adding brief personal conversations to these encounters. I learned that she was continuing her marketing education, had been promoted at her job, and was developing a specialty in creative campaign development for small businesses. She was building a legitimate portfolio under her name, occasionally referencing me as her sister and mentor, but never again blurring the lines between our identities. Our parents were relieved by this cautious reconciliation, though they remained somewhat oblivious to the depth of the betrayal and the slow, difficult process of rebuilding trust. To them, it was simply a sisterly spat that was now resolving itself, rather than a fundamental breach that had forever altered our relationship. As for Marcus, our professional collaboration evolved into friendship and eventually something more. He understood the complexity of the situation with Olivia in a way few others could, offering insights without judgment and support without pressure. 6 months after the confrontation, I finally cashed Olivia's check, using the money to take a solo vacation, something I had rarely allowed myself to do. During that week away, in a small coastal town with no professional obligations or family complications, I had the space to reflect on everything that had happened. I realized that while Olivia's actions had been deeply wrong, they had forced me to examine my own life in ways I might not have otherwise. Had I been so focused on building my career that I had neglected to build a complete identity outside of it? Had I unconsciously contributed to Olivia's sense that professional success was the only kind that mattered? Had I been so busy being the responsible sister that I had failed to see her struggles as anything more than irresponsibility? These questions didn't excuse what she had done, but they helped me understand my part in the dynamic that had led us here. They also helped me clarify what I wanted from my life going forward, not professional success, but meaningful relationships, personal growth, and experiences that had nothing to do with my job title or achievements. When I returned from vacation, I invited Olivia to dinner, our first purely social meeting since the confrontation. The conversation was stilted at first, both of us carefully avoiding sensitive topics, but as the evening progressed, we found our way to more honest communication. "I'm still angry sometimes," I admitted. "I still have moments when I can't believe what you did." "I know," she said. "I wouldn't expect anything else. What I did was unforgivable." "I don't think that's true," I replied slowly. "I think it is forgivable, eventually, but forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or pretending it never happened. It means finding a way forward despite what happened." "Is that what we're doing?" she asked. "Finding a way forward?" I considered this. "I think we're trying. That's all we can do right now." As we parted that night, Olivia hugged me briefly, the first physical contact we'd shared since the confrontation. "I'm going to keep trying," she promised, "to be someone worthy of being your sister." "Just be Olivia," I told her. "That's enough. That's always been enough." A year after discovering my sister's double life, I attended a marketing conference where, for the first time, we were both legitimate presenters. Me as a marketing director discussing strategic planning, Olivia as an emerging creative specialist presenting on her panel. We acknowledged each other professionally in our respective presentations, with me mentioning my creative sister's perspective and her referencing her strategic-minded sister's influence. Afterward, a colleague who knew our history commented on how well we had both done. "It must be strange," she observed, "seeing her build a career in your field after what happened." I thought about this for a moment. "It is strange," I acknowledged, "but also fitting in a way. She wanted so badly to be me that she stole my identity. Now she's finding her own identity in the same field, but as herself." "And you're okay with that?" my colleague asked, clearly surprised. "I'm getting there," I said honestly. "Some days it still hurts to think about what she did. Other days, I can see how far she's come since then, how hard she's working to make amends." That evening, as I prepared for the conference dinner, I received a text from Olivia. "I saw your presentation today. I'm still learning from you, but this time in the right way. I'm proud to be your sister." I stared at the message for a long moment, feeling the complicated mix of emotions that now defined our relationship. The betrayal would always be part of our story, a fault line in the foundation of our sisterhood. But perhaps, with time and continued effort on both sides, we could build something new on that fractured ground, not the uncomplicated closeness we once shared, but something more honest, more balanced, and ultimately more real. I typed a response. "Your panel was excellent. You found your voice. It's stronger than any imitation could be. As I set down my phone, I realized that this was the closest thing to forgiveness I had offered her, not a grand declaration or an emotional reconciliation, but a simple acknowledgement of her legitimate growth and success. It wasn't everything, but it was something. A step forward on a long, uncertain path. The identity theft had changed me in ways I was still discovering. I had become more protective of my accomplishments, but also more aware of their limitations. I had learned that the professional success I had pursued so single-mindedly was ultimately less important than the relationships I built and the person I chose to be. I had discovered that even the deepest betrayal could, with time and perspective, lead to unexpected growth. Most importantly, I had learned that identity isn't something that can truly be stolen. Olivia had taken my name, my credentials, and my professional persona, but she could never actually become me. And in her desperate attempt to do so, she had finally been forced to confront who she was, setting us both on paths to more authentic versions of ourselves. Have you ever discovered that someone close to you was living a double life or fundamentally betraying your trust? How did you handle it? Share your experience in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories about navigating complex family dynamics and finding your way through betrayal to something like healing. Thank you for listening to my journey.